Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we've seen Hotel Artemis.
Yes.
Which is a sort of futuristic-y, dystopian, sci-fi, high-concept, action-y thriller thing.
Which I loved.
Which I had quite a good time in, despite also falling asleep during it.
Oh, did you?
No, I didn't completely fall asleep, but towards the end I was getting there.
Oh, and did you think that it had to
if
do with
it had
film?
been, it's 90 minutes long or so, maybe 97 minutes, and if it had been a half hour longer, I would have fallen asleep. That's just because I was tired as well.
Ah, okay. Well, you know.
But it wasn't. It sort of wasn't quite exciting enough, despite being engaging.
Yes.
It's kind of not good enough actually as a thriller. It's not pacey or stylish or exciting enough. Nonetheless, it kept my interest.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
I loved it. And actually, I do see what you mean. There were some things that were done incredibly well visually, but it wasn't also visually stylish enough. And, you know, some of the action sequences could have been done better. But what I loved most of all was the actors, the interplay amongst the actors. And actually, I really loved Jodie Foster.
Let's give a rough idea of the film.
Yes.
Prior to spoiler territory. So it's set in
2028.
2028. Okay, so 10 years from now. Bloody hell, time's speeding up. And it's not kind of overly futury. Like there are holographic things every now and again, but it's not kind of beating you in the face with sort of sci-fi technology. Actually, what it is it's kind of the problems of today, sort of slightly amplified. But it feels like it's a sort of future that's really not very far off, in that it's set in LA with huge riots happening.
Yes.
Over a company called Clearwater. It's a water company that is... Clearly water has become even more of a commodity than it already is. I mean, there's... Because sort of infamously in Flint, Michigan...
Yes.
They don't have clean water, and they haven't had for a long time.
It's a disgrace. It's a failure. It's a state failure.
Yeah. So the kind of problems that the film is depicting are not very far away. They're completely realistic, really. So there's rioting happening over water being priced out of most people's reach. The film starts off with a bank heist by these two brothers, and they realise they're not going to get into the vault. But what they've got is a load of hostages who are poor people. They're gardeners and cleaners and maids and that sort of thing. And so they realise that these people have been sent during the riots to
for the valuables and
to obtain all their employers' valuables. And it's interesting. It's a really actually nice, elegant bit of setup, environmental setup, because the brothers realise this is the case, and they say to these people, "Stand up if your boss is a millionaire," and they all stand up, which is just, it's a really nice way of saying this is the wealth disparity.
Yes.
The boss is not just rich, but they're all millionaires, which I thought was quite a nice little touch. Anyway, that's going a little bit overboard on setting up the world, but I think the world is set up really nicely. There's a little bit of a shootout, and the brothers retreat to a sort of private members' hospital set in an old hotel called the Hotel Artemis, which is for criminals. Anyone else, all the good guys can get treated somewhere else, but the criminals, they can only get treated here. It's a little bit like that hotel in John Wick, where the criminals can go and stay, and then no one's allowed to kill each other there.
Yes, that's right.
Jodie Foster is the nurse who runs this place.
Yes.
She's neurotic, and she looks her age. I mean, it's
wonderful to see.
And she's fantastic, and she's this little old woman who's sort of neurotic and jumping about the place, but is totally in control of everything. It's a really good performance, and it's quite an interesting little character. There are a few other criminals already staying, getting various wounds treated in this place, and they have their own sort of backstories. Anyway, that's a quite long, spoiler-free version. But I think that's some of the best stuff in the film is the setup.
Yes.
I think it builds a really convincing world and a really interesting set of characters.
Yes.
To then kind of play and interact.
It does. I mean, I think the best thing about the film is the actors and the interplay amongst them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things that I find very interesting is this is a Jodie Foster film. The whole film is built around her. She's the main character. You know, which I would never have guessed from seeing the poster or even the trailer, actually. I thought, you know, this is a film, you know, how interesting to see Jodie Foster now in her late 50s or whatever, looking her age, and, you know, possibly, I thought from the trailer that she was maybe playing one of those cameos, that it would be, and Jodie Foster, you know, plays maybe like this key but minor role. But no, it is all about her. Yeah, like, you know, she is the film, really. And so I thought that was wonderful. I thought, you know, it was wonderful to see her saying this role. And of course, she's a truly great actress. And she makes kind of every minute count. Her face is like absolutely transparent. You know, you can read everything in it, you know. And she's always interesting to look at. Yeah. So, you know, for me, it was a thrill because I think, you know, for people of my generation, Jodie Foster kind of means a lot, you know. I mean, she was not only a star we all grew up with, like, you know, kind of, I remember as a teenager seeing her in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Right.
That was her. And of course, Taxi Driver famously, you know, and then I remember the time when the little foxes, and, you know, she didn't quite make it as a teen star, but she was, you know, she
but then
was getting
Silence
great.
of the Lambs happened.
Yeah, the Hotel New Hampshire, things like that. She got good reviews. Yeah, and then it was, I think, what was it? The it's not The Adjuster, but the film where she gets raped. You know.
I don't know. I'm not too familiar with her back catalogue, to be honest.
You know, there was a period in the late 80s and certainly, you know, through the early 90s where she was almost the only bankable female star.
Really?
Yeah, you know, so you could build a whole film around Jodie Foster in a way that you couldn't do around any other female star of that period, really. Maybe, well, you know, that's also the period in which Julia Roberts was starting her career. So, you know, obviously, kind of Julia Roberts became an even more of a box office star than Jodie Foster, I suppose. But, you know, but there was that period where she was the, you know, that kind of star. And also, you know, there were all these rumors about her being a lesbian and people trying to out her. And, you know, so she became also kind of like a symbol in a way. And then, of course, the whole thing with President Reagan, right, where the guy, you know, was in love with Jodie Foster and, you know, Hinckley, was it?
Oh, yeah.
So there's a whole kind of, you know, dimension to her star persona. And then she's been very picky about the roles that she does, right? So she's always been in quite big hits, right? I forget what was the sci-fi one with Matthew McConaughey.
Contact.
Contact,
yes,
right? That was a big hit. And then what was it? The Quiet Room or something like
Panic
that.
Room.
Panic Room.
Yeah.
You know,
David
that was
Fincher.
David Fincher. Yeah. So she's been in successful films, but she's been in very, like she does very few films, right?
Yeah, and she's able to choose her roles.
She's able to choose, and also she turned a bit, you know, to directing, which I think is a pity because, you know, I mean, she's a fine director. But she's really, I think, a truly great actress.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's always a shame when actors decide to direct because very few of them are any good at it.
Well,
in my opinion.
Yeah, very few are, in fact. And actually, the ones that are tend to be, you know, like, so for example, you know, somebody like Clint Eastwood, I mean, I think he's a better director than he's an actor, though obviously, you know, he's a better star than either of the two others, right? Yeah. Like, you know, one can make those distinctions. But the thing about directing is that it takes up years of people's lives, you know, whereas like, you know, an actor can do 2 or 3 movies a year, whereas a director's doing one film every 3 years. So I just think it's cinema's loss that we haven't seen her in more things, you know, and it was a joy for me to see her in this and to see her be so good, you know.
Yeah. So what did you like about her performance in this?
Well, I love that she looks her age, you know. I loved that you can really, like, she's a character who's in pain, right? So, you know, she's somebody who suffered a trauma in her life that's meant that she's ended up in this place curing criminals.
Yeah, this is as good a time as any to say spoilers here.
That's right. And she's been carrying the blame because, she's been thinking that her son has died of a drug overdose, whereas in fact what she ends up realizing is that the man who owns this hotel hospital that she runs and, had her son killed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
For stealing his car.
So she's been carrying all this guilt needlessly. So on the one hand, this knowledge kind of then frees her up for the rest of the film. But it's like, through all of the interactions with all of the characters, you get all different kinds of feeling of, so on the one hand she's tough and she's slightly alcoholic. On the other hand, she really cares for, the nurse that works with her, right?
Dave Bautista.
Yeah, she has real feeling for, the gangster she's curing and how conflicted he is about his brother. Like, you can read everything. And then she's also very funny, like the interactions with Jeff Goldblum and so on, right? Like, she brings out the laughs as well. So I think the only thing that I didn't like was her walk.
Yeah, you notice the walk, don't you? It's quite an affected, all these little steps.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of shuffle and it's very, very rapid.
It's mannered.
Yes, it certainly is.
So she's giving like a beautifully kind of natural performance, but then she's decided on this walk that makes the character almost caricatural in some way. I mean, it's always interesting. It's always interesting to look at. But there's almost like a level of truth and layers that she's conveying with her face that the body makes cartoony. Yeah. So, anyway, I thought it was just bliss to watch her. Jeff Goldblum the same. He's only in it for about 5 minutes. And he gives a Jeff Goldblum performance, right?
Yeah.
It's all about effect. It's all about, being sleazy and getting the laughs and being charming and,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's incredibly charismatic and he's incredibly good, and he's Jeff Goldblum. He's not even pretending to play a role.
How
really.
can you possibly pretend to play a role when you're Jeff Goldblum?
Yes.
But to be fair, actually, this is the first role I've seen him in a long time where he doesn't stammer. He doesn't go and do his Jeff Goldblum. He just gets his fucking lines out for once, which is quite nice.
Yes.
Because he's not got very long to say them.
So I also loved what's the French actress?
Boutella.
Sophia Boutella, who is my favorite action person in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, she's just brilliant. She's got this fantastic look, kind of Egyptian or something.
She's Algerian.
Okay, and she moves beautifully, and also she's a very good actress, really. So she was just, I think, a pleasure to watch. And then the film is people with all of these kind of character roles, So I also loved the guy from Atlanta,
Brian Tyree Henry.
Brian Tyree Henry. He's just so funny. And also, he's got...
And quite empathetic as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like... He's always like alive on screen, and he brings humor, from lines that aren't there, and he gives you like a fully rounded character with history, and conflict and so on, and he makes that out of nothing really. It's almost like it's not in the role, right? Like he creates it all himself. It's absolutely brilliant.
Well, it's funny you saying all this because what you started off by saying was that it's a film about Jodie Foster's character, and that she's the main character, and that specific sort of wording that she's the main character, I would take issue with, because I think while she's certainly the centre, in that she runs the hotel and she interacts with absolutely everybody. It has a real ensemble feeling. There are characters who are less prominent than the other. Charlie Day in particular is a sort of side character, but everyone else, it's not like about her journey.
Well, let me.
I mean, it doesn't start off with her. It starts off with Sterling K. Brown and Brian Tyree Henry's characters, and they go to the hospital and then meet her. So I mean, they start off as the protagonist, but I think what I liked about the structure is that it wasn't so down the line. It was it kind of branches off. So you meet these different characters, and Charlie Day's got whatever he's got going on, and he just wants to escape with. He's a rich bloke who wants to escape with a helicopter. And Sophia Boutella, turns out she's put herself in the hospital deliberately so that she can get to the rich guy to kill him. So she's got her own thing going on. Dave Bautista's got his he's the right hand man to the nurse, and so he's giving his opinion. He's got his own sort of ideas of what's going on. Obviously, the nurse has got her backstory and she's learning things. And then you've got the two brothers who know. I mean, for the one brother is learning about the other brother that he's still a junkie, and then trying to sort of cope with him, and he's got his history of, if I'd left him behind I would have made something more of myself, but I couldn't leave him behind because he's my brother. Point is, all of these characters are more or less equally privileged in how much of their stories are, how prominent their stories are. It's not quite so down the line as it's her story and the others revolve around.
I don't know. I mean, let's clarify, because I think we're probably saying the same things, but in different ways. And, to give a historical context, I think, when you talked about a Joan Crawford film or a Clark Gable film, it was always a story. The thing is that it was built around, the star. But actually, it always had fantastic, supporting characters, all with, goals of their own and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, something happened in the 80s where you get films like the Sylvester Stallone films where there's nothing else happening except him and his gun and his tits, right? But I mean, historically, vehicles for stars were built around the star, but it wasn't just about that person, right? So I think this is almost like kind of an archetypal vehicle, because I think it is built around the Jodie Foster character. Her story is the central one, and is the one that ties all the rest of them together. But of course, the film is rich enough to have all of these other things going on, and actually on different levels, because it's a melodrama. It's almost like a maternal melodrama. On the other hand, it's like a futuristic, slightly sci-fi film. It's also a gangster film, right? So and it's very noir. So it's kind of it's textured in that way.
Yeah, absolutely, and layered and quite successful at it.
Yes, I think so too.
It's quite an achievement in that respect, actually, when you think about it. But no, I mean, what I meant to say was just for instance, the assassination sort of story is basically entirely separate to what Jodie Foster's got going on. But it is also actually very important. That's kind of what I mean. In a more conventional vehicle for a star, or for a central star, the stories feed in to the central story. But in this film, you do have stories that are allowed to just be their own.
But she's the link to all of them.
Kind of. But they're not necessarily important.
Well,
that's what I mean. It just feels more disparate.
The guy that Sophia Boutella is out to kill is the guy who killed Jodie Foster's son and who financed the hospital for her to work in, and whose son is now threatening to blow up the hospital.
Of course they're linked, but my point is that it's not. I do think it's more disparate than that. It felt notable to me that it was not the case that it was all heading completely in one direction. I didn't know at what point things would become important or not important. I didn't know what to, I mean, for instance, you start off with the
bank
two
robbery.
Yeah, you start off with the two brothers doing the bank robbery and stealing this pen that turns out to contain diamonds owned by the crime boss. And so and this is kind of central MacGuffin at the start. You're going like, oh my god, this is going to be all about, and that pretty much fades into the background. Yes. You don't hear a lot more from that for the rest of the film. So that's what I mean. Other things take over, and things are allowed to come up and go down, and
though they're beautifully connected.
Yeah.
So the pen kind of is something that then links the brother, that the Sophia Boutella character.
Yeah, she knows about it.
She knows about it. The imagery of it is brought back, because then when the Jeff Goldblum character comes in and gives the ring to his son, it's got the same symbol as the pen, and it's very well worked through.
It is well worked through.
So I liked it very much.
It's put together cleverly and nicely, and and with care and attention.
Yes. So let's go now on to the things that you found weaker.
I couldn't tell you that. It is weird that I was kind of bored, but also interested. Like you said, the actors carry the film really heavily, and I don't think it's that the filmmaking sort of around it, that the editing and the shot selection, that sort of thing. It's not that they are failures, but they're not as strong as they could be, or as interesting as they could be. But then it's also not that they're kind of plain. It's just, were it not for the strength of the performances, I think the film would feel a lot weaker. It would feel like more of a missed opportunity because you could still tell that all of the work that's gone into building the world is so strong.
Yeah.
That it's a shame that it's not expressed so much through the camera and through the visual storytelling.
You know what I wish? I mean, so it's I think it's a great script, right? And I wish it had been directed by Brad Bird. Yeah, you know, so because actually the two people I was thinking of was the Mission Impossible films and
J.J. Abrams, Doug Liman type of action.
Yeah, well, I was thinking specifically of the Mission Impossible films. So, you know, so not the Doug Liman actually, because they're almost like too fast and too disjointed. There's an elegance about the Mission Impossible films, the action sequences, right? So I was thinking if either David Fincher or, you know, one of the recent directors of the Mission Impossible films had taken this script and these actors, it would have been amazing.
It isn't sort of directed well enough, although there are elements to the direction that are good. Like I say, that I think that it is quite elegant in its opening act in the way it introduces the world and introduces all the characters. And the various story elements that are going to interact and develop. I think that's really good. As the film then does develop, it is less. It's more just sort of functional.
Yes. But the actors are so good, and they're given stuff to do, and also they're given, each is given a little character arc or a moment of feeling.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of makes the film bubble along great. It's a kind of film that I could imagine being on TV again and just stopping things to watch it. You know, kind of watching the actors do their stuff gave me an enormous amount of pleasure. And it's very rare.
It's the best film to fall asleep to.
That's so not true.
It was quite good fun to fall asleep to. I like.
And you in fact say you didn't.
No, I didn't quite fall asleep. But like I say, that's also it doesn't outstay its welcome. It's quite brief.
Yes.
It gets in and out. Do you know what I mean? And if it had been too overdeveloped and too self-indulgent and half an hour longer, then it would have been way too much, and I would.
Then it would have been a different film. So
sure, but I'm just saying, like, it's a yeah. I like that it just went out in 100 minutes.
It was really good.
It was decent, yeah. Yeah, it's got pretty light.
I didn't think it was light. Actually, I thought it had a real critique of American society and what it's become, where, you know, kind of everything is privatized, you know, where the whole social fabric has fallen apart, where kind of, you know, the streets are unworkable, you know, there are curfews every night, and then it's in a not too distant future. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole kind of critique of the culture just embedded in that.
Yeah,
you know. There's a thing about family, about kind of, you know, what brotherly love is, and, you know, the restrictions that imposes, and also the things that it opens up and offers up. You know, there's kind of, you know, stuff on motherhood and what it means to raise children and to feel responsible for them, and, you know, and guilt and so on. So, I mean, it has themes that are worked through.
Yeah.
And I think kind of dramatized very well.
Yeah,
you know.
No, I agree.
So, I would recommend...
And all in the context of a kind of silly sci-fi high-concept thriller.
Yes.
And I like that.
Yes, I like that too. It moves along very well.
Yeah.
And, you know, all of the actors, I thought, you know, were wonderful. With Jodie Foster just kind of taking the cake because, you know, I think I've missed her so. Welcome back, Jodie.
What the last thing she was it? Because I can't think of what her recent. Well, she directed Money Monster, which was not that great. It was kind of fun, but not that great. Oh, Carnage, that the what's his name film, Polanski.
I haven't seen that.
That's a fun little movie.
But I did see Elysium, and actually I thought her role here would be like in Elysium.
Yeah.
You know, where she's got this showy, important, but really secondary role, and you know that isn't the case. I think she carries the movie.
Yeah.
So
it's good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. We are on
SoundCloud, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes. If you Google Eavesdropping at the Movies, we show up somewhere. And
we recommend that you see this film.
Yes.
Thank you.